Welcome to IT Pro TV. I'm your host, Don.
Coming to you live from San Francisco.
You're watching IT Pro TV.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another exciting edition of IT Pro TV. I'm your host, Vaughn Smith, and this is Cisco CCNA exam 200-301. And in this episode, we're going to take a look at an overview of networking components. And here to help us is the Mr. Ronnie Wong. How are you doing today, sir?
I am doing well, Vaughn. Thank you again for joining us as we continue to actually take a look. But Vaughn, yes, we're taking a look at a very interesting subject at this point, where we're going to be talking about, well, networking components. And what we want to do, of course, is to understand that some of us may have actually been working in the field before, but some of us haven't. We expect, of course, that you've already have the prerequisite knowledge, but just in case you don't, right, we're going to do just a short little overview of the idea of different networking components, especially explaining the idea of the roles and functions and, of course, where they appear. So, Vaughn, does that sound like fun?
I think that sounds fantastic. And I'm assuming you have a wonderful visual aid for us, don't you?
I do. So that way it actually helps us to accomplish a couple of different things as we begin. So let's take a look at my screen as we jump right into this and start talking about the idea of different networking components. So Vaughn, when we first start talking about the idea of networking components, we want to make sure that we understand that it's not just one device that counts as the entire network itself, but it is a whole, well, a whole bunch of many different devices. I want to say a symphony of devices, but that's not exactly quite the greatest analogy in the world. But it's a whole bunch of different devices that are connecting together somehow in some way that make up the entirety of networks that we have. And all of them, of course, function so that we can get the communication that we need. So, Vaughn, when we start talking about the idea of networking components, it always has to begin with the idea of a need that we have. So usually we are on some type of device, and let me zoom in so that I can kind of point out what I want to. So let's say, for example, of course, today we're on a workstation at work, or we have a laptop and we're connecting in wirelessly however we want to. But Vaughn, the whole goal behind connecting to a network, of course, is so that I can connect and get the resources that I need and get that information back to me. Without this type of connection on a network, Vaughn, the way that we would do network traditionally, of course, is what we call the old idea of sneakernet. So Vaughn, have you ever used a USB key to transfer files from, let's say, your laptop to a desktop computer before?
I have, and I do remember the first time I heard sneakernet, I'm like, I don't know of this. I know the internet and I know intranets. I'm like, sneakernet, that must be some like proprietary thing. You mean using your shoes and you walking over to somebody else's desk and handing them a file or a USB key and saying, here, I need to go ahead and send you this file.
Right.
Yeah.
So at the very beginning, we start thinking about components, and the basic idea of the network there is really fairly simple to do that, right? A USB key goes into your laptop, you copy the files on that, you take it over to a workstation that you have there, and Vaughn, we've just done networking, okay? Now, Vaughn, in that sense, is limited, okay? So in that limitation of things, it means that I can only get information from one device to another. Now, we can continue to transfer that over to another workstation if we need to, whatever we actually want to do. But when we start thinking about it, Vaughn, we want this to be much more efficient, because if not, we have to do this for every single person inside of our network. So instead, what we can do is we can link up multiple pieces of components, okay, or equipment that allow us to form what we call a network that can provide for us that connectivity and the same functionality as well. So each one of the components that we see right here, Vaughn, has a particular role and function, and we're going to be diving into those a bit, more in depth as we move through this kind of little mini series here on networking component. But at the beginning, Vaughn, what we want to do is have a big kind of 10,000-foot overview and understand the layout and topology of most typical small to medium networks. Now, I'm not actually going into large, gigantic, super-sized networks here, but some that most of us are going to be fairly familiar